Welcome to UntargetHTML5.com. This is Mike King, your host, and in this tutorial we're actually going to be looking at the transition property, the new transition property of CSS3, and creating a slide down hover effect. It's kind of a cool effect that you can create. It gives you an animated slide down of a photo or an image, and then it slides down, and behind it you can see some text. I'm actually going to show it to you in a second. So let's go ahead and move into our development environment, and we will look at a slide down effect prior to creating it. So I'm going to drop down. This is the work environment for UntargetHTML5.com. I am going to go ahead and bring up my browser, and this is the effect that we're actually going to create during this tutorial. Or I'm going to put a bunch of photos into an HTML document. When you hover over them, they're actually going to slide down. You'll get full control of the background, the text, the titles, but they'll slide down to display text underneath them. I think it's kind of a cool effect, and what's neat is we don't have to have any JavaScript to do this. We can actually do this with nothing but HTML and CSS based on that new transition effect in CSS3. So with that, let's move into our tutorial and start building our effect. Alright, so I'm going to be using Sublime Text 3 for this particular demonstration. You can use whatever text editor you prefer. I actually have been using Sublime Text for a long time, and I'm just comfortable with it. And I'll be using Google Chrome as my browser. My start file is going to be consisting of nothing but a boilerplate HTML5 file. You can actually see it on your screen. Great time for you to pause if you need to get that typed in. That'll be our starting file for the HTML file. I am also going to have a starting CSS file, styles.css, and it is only going to include my comment line. So I've got two files I'm working with. I'm going to be working with the start.html and a styles.css. Again, if you want to pause to get that HTML file typed in, this would be a good time to do that. I also have 5 images. I'll be working with a few of those images throughout the tutorial series. They are 300 by 200 pixels. You can use whatever images you prefer. I'll be using some travel images that I just happen to have that I use on a lot of my different tutorial sites. And again, I'm using 300 by 200. You can use whatever images you prefer, and you can actually adjust the sizes inside the CSS, and I'll explain that as we go through. Alright, so the transition property in CSS is one of the newest properties in CSS3 and allows us to do and create some very interesting animated effects using only HTML and CSS. Up until these transition properties, that wasn't possible. We had to use JavaScript and some other third-party languages to actually do any type of animation or interaction inside of our HTML documents. But with the changes in CSS3, a lot of that's no longer required, a lot of that third-party stuff. So in this tutorial, we'll create a slide down hover effect on a group of photos using HTML and CSS. I'll be starting with the basic HTML5 boilerplate template, which I showed you just a few minutes ago. Again, we've got a link to a CSS file. I actually have it in a CSS directory. I want to make certain that you understand that. I've got the HTML file opened. I also have images. I have an images directory that I'm using here that has 5 travel images that we'll be using as we go through. First thing I want to do is I want to add a title to this. I'm just going to call this a slide down hover effect. And again, best practices, we should always have a title on all of our pages. Even though this is a training page, I am still going to use a title. And again, I am using 300 by 200 pixel images. So if you're going to set up your own image file, then you'll want to do that. I'm going to add an H2 to my body. I'm going to come right in there and add an H2. And I'm going to call this my slide down effect. And I'm just giving the page a title. As a best practice, I'm sure you're all aware that you should only have one H1 on your HTML pages. And the next thing I want to do is right underneath, by the way, I give a lot of those tips as I'm going through these tutorials. Right under that H2, I want to create an unordered list. So I'm going to come down right below my H2, and I'm going to put in a UL with a class of slide down and a class of effect. And then I'm going to close my UL. This UL is what's going to actually contain all of our images and our text. So in my first LI, so I'm going to come inside my UL and I'm going to put in an LI. And inside that first LI, I'm going to have an H3. This is actually going to be the title for that image that we're going to display. So I'm going to come right down inside there and put an H3, which is going to be it's going to have a class of content, and it's going to be the title for my image. Then I'm actually going to come in and put a P tag. I'm going to give that a class, and it's going to have a class of content also. This is going to be the content or the description of that picture, and I'm just going to put in some text in there. You could use whatever you want. I'm just going to use actually just a line or two of text. This will be the text that pertains to your image. I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to paste that again. This will be the text that pertains to your image. I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to paste it one more time. Then I'm going to period, and I'm going to close out that P tag. So we're going to have an H3 and a paragraph tag inside that first LI. Then I'm going to close out the LI tag, and then I'm going to open up another LI, and this LI is actually going to contain my image. So I'm going to come in right inside that LI, and I am going to put our image tag. It's going to have a class of top, and then I'm going to give it a source to my images folder and one of the images in that folder. And I am going to fill out my alt text because we all know that that is now becoming a critical requirement with SEO. If you don't have alt text on all your images on your website, you will get penalized in SEO. They're really starting to push these standards now a lot more than they used to. I'm going to go ahead and save all these changes. This is a great time to pause if you need to get this stuff typed in. And again, we've got a UL with a class of slide down and effect. I've got two LIs. My first LI is going to contain my text content for that photo. It's going to have a title, which is an H3, and paragraph text, which is a P tag. They both have a class of content. Then I'm going to open up another LI inside that UL. It's going to contain my image with a class of top and a source that directs it to that particular image. I'm going to go ahead and save all these changes. And next, we're going to start working on our CSS. I do want to go into my browser and let's refresh just to make sure we've got all our stuff in there, which we do. Perfect. Now we're going to go in and start working on our CSS file. All right, so let's go start working on that CSS file. I'm going to open up my styles.css file. That is the one I have in the CSS folder. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use my wildcard and zero out all the paddings and margins that make up this current rendering engine. So which will be whatever rendering engine happens to be viewing this. So I'm going to say margins are going to be set to 0. So I'm going to say margin 0, and that with a semicolon, and I'm going to do the same thing with padding. So I'm going to say padding 0 and end that with a semicolon. All that does is it removes any of the default settings that are actually in the particular browser you're using. I'm going to go ahead and save all those settings. I'm going to go back into my browser and refresh, and you'll notice now that everything moves up into the upper left-hand corner, which is exactly what we want. We want to start with a fresh, clean slate whenever we start working with any of our files inside CSS. And this is a very down and dirty and very cheap, and I won't even call it a CSS reset because it only does margins and paddings, but it's basically just resetting all the margins and paddings for our particular browser. Next thing I want to do is I want to come in and style that H2. So I'm going to hit H2, I'm going to open and close my curly braces, and the first thing I want to do is I want to do a text align. So I want to say text align, and I want that to be center. And I want to come down right below that, and I want to say margin bottom, and my margin bottom is going to be set to 20 pixels. I'm going to come down right below the H2. I'm going to put UL because now we're actually going to address that unordered list that we put in there, and I want to say margin, if I can find my M key, and it's going to be 10 pixels top and bottom, and it's going to be auto left and right. And then right below that, I want to put in my list style. So I'm saying list style type. You should know what we're getting ready to do here. I'm going to take say none to get rid of those bullets. I am going to save all those changes. Another great time to pause if you need to type that in. I am going to go into my browser, refresh my browser window, and we should see now our heading is centered, and we actually are starting to see a little bit of padding or a little bit of margin that we put in for our UL. All right, now let's go back in and look at that container itself. I am going to create a container class. So with an ID of container, I am going to open and close my curly braces. Let's go ahead and save something, or not save something. I want to look at something real quick. I did not think I did that. I needed to put a container inside my body element. I thought I forgot something. All right, let's add a div tag inside the HTML document before we go any further. Give it an ID of container. I can't believe I forgot that. I always use containers. All right, close out that top upper div and come down below the UL and give it that closing div. This is going to be the container we're actually getting ready to address inside our CSS. Can't believe I forgot to put that in there. Let's go ahead and save all those changes. And again, all we've done is we've added a container div to contain all the elements in our HTML page. That's always the best practice, by the way, to have a container to contain everything so we can control the width of our viewport. Or not actually the width of the viewport, the width of the content in the viewport. All right, I'm going to put a margin in my container, and it's going to have 0 top and bottom, auto left and right, so that we can get that centered. I'm going to give it a background color. So I'm going to say background color of my container. I'm going to use RGBA because I actually want to have a transparency on this. I'm going to say RGBA. I'm going to open my parentheses. My first number is going to be 213. I am going to hit a comma. The next one is going to be 213 and comma. And the next one is going to be 213, comma, and 0.6. And that's going to be my transparency setting. And then I'm going to end that with a semicolon. Next thing I want to do, let's go ahead and save all those changes before we go any further. I just want to make sure I get that saved because I typed all that good stuff in. I'm going to come down right below the background color and I want to add a width of 95%. So I'm going to say 95% width. I am going to give it a height of auto because I want to make certain it's as high as my highest elements. And right below that, I'm going to say padding bottom of 20 pixels. That's so that we have a little bit of space after our final image. I'm going to go ahead and save all those changes. This is a good time to pause if you need to get those in for our container. Let me scroll up just a tad. Pause if you want to get those in for the container. And please do make certain that you added the container div inside your HTML document. I'm going to go back to my browser, refresh our browser window. You see now we got this nice light gray background, and we're taking up about 95% of our current viewport. And that's going to be dynamic based on how the viewport is set up. All right, next thing I want to do, we're going to get in and start working with the classes now that we actually set up for our actual photos. All right, so still working in our CSS file. I'm going to come right down below where I set up my container, and I'm going to address the class slide down. Slide down, let me go ahead and show you once we get this typed in, open and close our curly braces. And when we go back to our HTML document, the slide down is actually a class that I assigned to our unordered list. That's what we're working on right now, the classes for that particular unordered list. I am going to put a margin left, and I'm probably going to change this, I think. We'll see. Margin left of 38%. This is actually going to be part of our centering, but I may change the way I've actually set this up. We'll see as we work through it. My position is going to be relative. It's going to be relative to the parent container. My width is going to be set at 300 pixels. And this is one of the settings I was telling you about when we first began for these photos. I'm using 300 by 200, so my height is going to be 200 pixels. You're going to want to make these adjustments based on the photo sizes that you use. Our overflow, and what the overflow is for, we're actually going to have it set to hidden. But this way, when we slide that picture or slide the image, the photograph down, as we're going to do in this demonstration, this way it doesn't show as it's sliding down outside the rectangle we've just created. So any overflow is hidden. That's what we're using it for. My margin is going to be 0 and auto. And again, it's going to be centering. And my background color is going to be RGBA. Open your parentheses. I want to make this 0, 17, 255, point, or 0.25 for transparency. I want to save all those changes. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up just a tad so that you get a better view of what we're doing here, because we got a couple more to type before we're going to pause. After my slide down, I actually want to address the slide down paragraph and the slide down H3. What I'm talking about now is the actual H3 tag that's inside the slide down class and the paragraph tag that's inside that slide down class in the event you are not sure. So I'm going to come right below my slide down. I'm going to say, okay, let's address the slide down P and the slide down H3. Open and close those curly braces. And inside my very first setting, I'm actually going to set some stuff up that's common now to both of these. I'm actually going to copy these so you don't have to watch me type them. And I'll make certain that you got time to get these in once you're done, or once I'm done. So the first thing we're doing is we're setting our text color to 000, which is going to make our text color black. I'm setting my padding around all of this to 10 pixels, top, bottom, left, and right. Then I'm actually setting up a positioning, a 10 pixels left, 20 pixels from the top. So we're actually positioning now our elements inside this container. And the container we're talking about now is that slide down container. The position is relative to the parent, and again, the parent is slide down. The font family is going to be Times New Roman, Times and Serif, and my margins are going to be 0 all the way around. I'm going to slide up just a little bit more. Let's get one more in before we pause. And this is going to pertain particularly to the paragraph itself inside that slide down container. So I'm going to say my slide down paragraph is going to have a font size of 12 with a line height of 16 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and save all these changes. this is a great time for you to pause to get these typed in. I am going to go into our browser, refresh our browser window, and you can see now that we've made a lot of changes already based on what we've done. We actually have our background, our title, and our text is starting to take shape. You can actually see the image in there now. So we're actually starting to see how this is going to appear. The next thing we're actually going to be doing now, we're going to do the H3. So I'm going to come right down below the paragraph. And again, I'm going to just copy this in so you don't have to watch me type. I'll talk you through it once we get it in. So again, I'm in the slide down container. I'm talking about the H3. My margin left, I want to be minus 10 pixels. My font size is 16 pixels and my line height is 18 pixels. And again, this is based on the font size and the line height we've given the paragraph. We want to make certain that our heading is a little bit bigger. I'm going to come right below that now and start positioning our image. So now I'm going to slide up just a tad and I'm going to say in our effect class. Now let's go in and show you where the effect class is. In the image itself, in the slide down itself, we've given an effect class. And I'm talking about now inside this effect class, I want you to look for the image tag. Because remember, this is part of the UL, so the image is falling inside of that. Inside that image, I want you to do a position of absolute. Left is 0, bottom is 0, cursor is a pointer, margin is 0, transition is bottom, 1/4 of a second, and ease is the actual transition property I'm using. There's quite a few of these if you go to the W3C that we can actually use ease in, ease out, linear, ease, ease out. We're going to use ease for this one. Right below that, I actually want to start building our hover effect. So I'm going to come down right below where I set up my image, and I'm going to say, okay, effect image.top. And remember that our image does have a class of top. I'm saying .top, so with the image with a class of top, when someone hovers over you, the bottom is going to be negative 125, so we're actually now starting to move that image down, and the padding top is going to be 100. So now we're actually starting to expose that text. And this is the transition that's actually going to control how this moves. This is telling it to move bottom 1/4 of a second in ease, and this is saying exactly what's going to happen when that bottom begins to occur. And then I want to do one other thing. I'm going to come down here. I'm not quite certain why I put this below here. I could actually put this up top where I'm going to leave it below so that when we pause, you can see everything. I'm going to have a heading to .content, p.content, margin padding 0. So basically I'm zeroing out the margin and padding in our content for both our H2s and our P tags. I'm going to save all those changes. Great time to pause if you need to catch up with what we've typed in. I am going to go into my browser and refresh my browser window. We now have this beautiful image that's positioned over our text, and when I hover over it, the text appears. I can control the timing of that by this setting right here. I've got it set, or I had it set to 1/4 of a second. Let's make it 1/2 a second. Save the change, refresh the browser. Yeah, it slides a little, maybe 1/2 a second is better. I'm going to try it at a second just to see if that makes it too slow. I think 1/4 of a second was a little bit too fast. I'm going to go and refresh the browser. Yeah, see, I think that's kind of too slow. So let's leave it at 1/2 a second. 1/2 a second is probably a better setting. 0.5. Save all the changes, refresh our browser window. Yeah, because that actually looks very smooth on my system. I'm not certain how the screen recording's picking it up. Hopefully it's smooth for you, but that's a very smooth transition to open up that text. If I wanted it to go down further, I could actually set this at a further setting, like -150. So let's just save it at 150. Save all those changes. Refresh our browser window. Now it's going to slide down 150. If I actually wanted it to become, remember now our images are 200 or 300 wide by 200 high. If I wanted to slide all the way off, I'd just make it 200. Save all, refresh our browser. Now to slide all the way down where you don't even see it. And again, because we've got the overflow hidden, you're not seeing that image as it slides down. I'm going to put it back to 125. Just for the sake of the demonstration, save the change, refresh the browser, and I think that's good. I think 125 is good. Sliding it down 125 pixels, remember it's 200 pixels high. All right, now what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to add some additional photos to this for our demonstration before we close it out. All right, so before we wrap things up, let's go ahead and add some additional images. I'm going to go back into the start.html file. I am going to select everything within inside my UL, Control-C on the PC and Command-C on the Mac. And I'm going to come right down below my closing UL tag, and I'm going to paste in another complete UL. And again, that's the only thing that's going to change in these is the actual title, the text, and the image. So I'm going to paste that one in. I'm going to change my image to travel_4. I'm going to come right down below that closing UL and paste in another one, Control V on the PC and Command V on the Mac, and change that image to _3. And I'm going to come down right below that closing UL and paste in one more. Control V on the PC, Command V on the Mac, and I'm going to change that to travel_2. By the way, the only reason I'm using those names, I know that's why my images are named inside my folder. I tend to do that with a lot of my projects if I'm using the same type of images or same group or category of images. I'll name them so it's easy for me to get them in and out of my files, especially when I'm working on customer sites. I'm going to go ahead and save all those changes. Great time to pause if you need to get a few extra images in your set. And again, remember, we're just copying everything that's enclosed in the opening and closing UL tags. I'm going to go into my browser, refresh my browser window, and now I've got 4 images in my browser, and all my new hover animations are working beautifully. A couple things I noticed when I look at this, I don't really like the fact that the images are right up against each other inside my browser window, so I'm going to go in and fix that. Whenever you design tutorials like this, and especially when you're doing them as you go, you always run into things you're going to change. And I had a feeling I was going to change these anyway. I think I talked about it when I actually put these in. I'm going to go up into my slide down class. And the first thing I want to do is I want to remove this margin 0 auto, because that's not going to work like that. I also want to remove the margin left. And I kind of thought when I put this in, I wasn't going to leave it there. I just didn't realize how fast I'd take it out. So what I want to do is I'm going to add some stuff to this particular class. I'm going to give it a margin left. And I want the margin left to be set to auto. And I'm going to come right below that and give it a margin right. And again, this is going to make my centering much more accurate this way. And you probably knew that, or anyone that's been around CSS for a while knew that. But I was actually playing with some other things, and that's why I wanted to use that percentage. It just didn't work out the way I thought. I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Save also. Remember, we removed the margin 0 auto and the margin left 38%. We added margin left and margin right auto. I'm going to refresh my browser window. And they look much better. And see, now we've got the gap in there in between the images. I do see some other things I don't like though. One thing, I want to add a border to this. I think I should have a border around the image itself. So inside that slide down, I am going to add a new property, border. Put my semicolon in there. Let's just make it 1 pixel, solid, and a dark gray. I'm going to use 333. That's a nice dark gray. Let's go ahead and save that change. Good time to pause to get that in. I'm going to go in and refresh my browser window. Oh yeah, see, I think that looks a lot better because not only does it make the picture stand out a little better, we could actually probably even have a 2 pixel border. It also highlights where your text is. When it gets across that lighter background, it makes the text stand out a lot better. I also noticed something else I don't like which is going on right now. I'm noticing that my text is overrunning my box. So let's go fix that. I'm going to go to the slide down P and slide down H3 where we actually set up the parameters for those text fields. And I'm going to add a new parameter. In fact, it's going to be my first one. Let's give it a width. We know our pictures are 300 pixels wide. I've got some padding on the left and top. I'm going to add 270 pixels. That should be about right for our text. I'm going to save that change. Refresh my browser window. So at a 270 pixel width, my text should be in there almost perfect. And it is. Based on the settings we have for our other margins, that looks almost perfect. And we could do a text justify to actually get us some really nice. Let's go into the paragraph for a minute and let's do text align. I'm just going to do a text align justify just to see how close it is to both edges. Save all. Don't have to leave it set there, by the way, if you don't like it. I'm just curious because I want to get a flat edge on both sides. I could probably go to about 274 if I wanted to, but I'm going to leave it at 270. It looks good. But now we've got a nice title, nice text information, and we have a nice image that kind of slides down from our text box. I kind of like it. It's a very cool hover effect. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. We've got a couple other ones that we're doing on this transition property. It's a very cool property. The more I learn about it, the more I like it, and the more stuff I'll add to the website. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. Please support OnTargetHTML5.com. We're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of new project tutorials. Don't forget to check out some of the new tutorial sets we have. We just did a 10-hour series on Flexbox. That's another great property inside of CSS3. Really, really assists in the way that you lay out sites. Anyway, have a good day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.